This is In-Ear Insights, the Trust Insights podcast. AI Academy for Marketers is an online education platform designed to help marketers like you understand, pilot, and scale artificial intelligence. The AI Academy features deep dive certification courses of 3 to 5 hours, along with dozens of short courses, 30 to 60 minutes each, taught by leading AI and marketing experts. Join Katie Robert, CEO of Trust Insights, and me, Christopher Penn, Chief Data Scientist of Trust Insights, for 3 of our courses in the Academy: 5 use cases of AI for content marketing, intelligent attribution modeling for marketing, and detecting and mitigating bias in marketing AI. The Academy is designed for manager-level and above marketers and largely caters to non-technical audiences, meaning you don't need a programming background or a background in data science to understand and apply what you learn. One registration gives you unlimited access to all the courses, an invitation to a members-only Slack instance, and access to new courses every quarter. Join now and save $100 off registration when you go to trustinsights.ai/AI Academy and use registration code PEN100 today. That's trustinsights.ai/AI Academy and use registration code PEN100 today. In this week's In-Ear Insights, we are talking fundamentally about automation. So we're doing some work last week with a client and looking at this massive spreadsheet of all these reports and spreadsheets and things like that. And in reviewing this, one of the things we thought was, why is this organization creating, one-off reports for every single ask? It's so time consuming and really not the best use of talent when you look at the collection of requests and say, you could just put this in a dashboard. You could put this in like Google Data Studio or Tableau or Domo or the dashboarding system of your choice and hand it to the users. And as long as it's well designed, they should be able to figure out what it is with minimal explanation. But then they can self-serve. They can get their data whenever they want it, as often as they need it. And most importantly, for the analyst, you don't have to essentially be the report machine, the report vending machine. People come in and put a coin in, push some buttons, and you spit out a report. So, Katie, why is it that organizations and people and analysts are stuck in this space of, I got to be the report vending machine, I got to spit the thing out, I got to do the thing, instead of taking a step back and going, how can I make a system that will solve these requests forever, which will make everybody happy? Because I, as the analyst, won't be spitting out reports like a little crank box toy, and the users won't have to wait hours, days maybe, to get the information they need so they can make decisions faster.
There's definitely a couple of different reasons. So one is, depending on how large your team is, you may not realize that that's what's happening at all. It may be I'm constantly behind the 8 ball. I just need to get the thing done. I don't have time to think about the historical work that I've already done to say, I've done this report 6 times over. Why do I have to do it again? So that's one scenario. Another scenario is maybe you as the analyst say, hey, I already did this report for the sales team. Do you want to use that report? And the marketing team says, no, I have a unique set of needs. I need to know exactly how this affects me personally. Do this uniquely for me. And so there's sort of that's the second reason. And then the third reason, probably the most common reason, is, will I automate myself out of a job? And I think that there's a lot of psychology that comes into this kind of a conversation, because you're talking about basically automating away the thing that you're getting paid to do. Therefore, if it's automated and you're not doing it, what are you doing instead? And I think that is probably the most common, followed by, there's not enough time to step back and see that you already have this wide library of reporting. Not everybody knows how to automate. Not everybody knows how to pull it into Google Data Studio, tell the story. Oh, I can just spin up a dashboard and it automatically works for me. Not everybody has the right systems in place to do that. So there's a lot of different factors as to why these things aren't being done. And once you can understand why, then you can start to solve for, how do I fix it moving forward? Do I even want to fix it? So from where we sit, we always, we come at it from a different perspective. We always say, yes, you do want to fix it, because the more you automate, the more time you have to do other valuable tasks. but we're coming at it from an outside perspective. Internally, there may be some hesitation. Well, I don't know if there are other valuable tasks for me to be doing. I used to work with a very large data team, and it was a struggle for years. Myself and the director of engineering would approach them probably about once a quarter and say, we have some ideas for automation for how your reporting, which takes 60 days from start to finish for one report, to be automated. And I got constant pushback from the team. And over time, we finally realized that they didn't want to automate any of it because then they didn't have the leg to stand on to say, we need more money. We're doing some very, special, unique snowflake work, whatever the thing was. If we had automated it, the rest of the company would have been able to see that they didn't need 10 people on the team, that they probably only need about 2 or 3.
So let's unpack that, because I think I can see that both ways. When I was in high school, I worked as a summer admin at AT&T, and one of my jobs there, which was awful, was to take 700 pages of printed paper every day, tally up the number of people who had rejoined AT&T from like MCI or Sprint back at the time on Post-it notes, and then put that together into a spreadsheet that then got printed out and handed off to my next command. That took 7.5 hours a day. And I said, this is really stupid. You're printing out a spreadsheet, walking it 2 floors down so that I can rekey in the information. Can you just email me the spreadsheet? And this was, in the early 1990s. And the person was like, what's email? I'm like, it's this inter-off. Come here, I'll just. But what ended up happening was I got to the point where this person would email me the spreadsheet. I built a Visual Basic macro, super simple back then, that just did the thing for me. And so within 5 minutes of my workday, I was essentially done with the day's worth of work. I spent the rest of the day wandering around the building aimlessly, which is great as a summer intern. Obviously, they no longer need that position because 5 minutes of work with one push of a button. But the other side is, if you stop being the system and you create the system, someone has to maintain the system. And the more automation you create, the more complex the system gets, until you reach a point where the system cannot function without you as the maintainer and operator of it. And so it increases, at least from my perspective, it increases your job security, because now nobody knows how the heck the thing works except you. And you've clearly demonstrated it's indispensable. And so I don't understand the mindset of, if I do this, I'll automate myself out of a job, instead of, if I do this, I'll be even more indispensable. How do you resolve that brain space?
Well, I guess I want to take a step back for a second, and not everybody knows where to start how to automate. So, you're talking about creating macros. In my brain, I'm like, do I even know how to create a macro? I don't know that I do. Or if I do, it's buried deep within the recesses of my brain. And so, you, Chris, are unique in the fact that you approach everything with, I can solve this with code, because you know how to code, or that's just how your brain is sort of wired to think about solving a problem. A lot of marketers aren't wired that way, or they've never had an opportunity to think about it in that way. And so that's where I think the hesitation is perhaps they see that automation might be a solution, but they don't even know where to start. And so we've talked with a lot of clients and a lot of other marketers where, yes, they're aware of Google Data Studio, but they don't know how to start with a system like that. Whereas to you and I, it's a very simple system, but we've been working with it for a long time. So I think before we can get into how do we, sort of the psychology, where does someone even start if they know nothing about automation?
I mean, to me, you start with curiosity. You have to have that impulse to say, how can I do this better? The rule in coding is you should never copy and paste more than twice, right? If you copy and paste more than twice, you should be writing a routine for it. But the very beginning of your journey starts with that curiosity of, is there a better way to do this? One of the perennial cliches is, there's an app for that, right? There's an app for everything. There's a reason why the MarTech landscape has 8,000 solutions on it, because there literally is an app for that, whatever that is. And so I would say for the non-technical person, the first step on the journey is just to ask the question: is there an app for that? Is there a way to do this in an automated fashion? And start Googling. Even if it's something as simple as when I do my morning blog post, I have a keyboard shortcut because there's an app that just lets you store essentially templates, right? And instead of having to copy and paste from an Evernote notebook or whatever, just hit two keys on my keyboard and it spits out my blog template. Okay, that's not fully automated, but it saves me 5, 10, 15 minutes a day. And if folks start thinking, oh, what are the things that I just do over and over and over again? Is there a way to at least automate some of it, to start trimming away? Not, just open up RStudio or Jupyter Notebook and just start writing code. That's unrealistic. But could I create a keyboard shortcut that just copies and pastes my email signature? Could I create a keyboard shortcut that would put up a blog post template so I don't have to do this? You've been doing a tremendous amount with Asana, the task management software, in terms of like, here's just the templates for how we do this sort of thing, so that it's not a machine doing all of it, but it's a defined process, and you've compressed some of the tasks into easily copy pasted things. So I would say that's the start of it. How do you think about, when you're building a system of processes, making it efficient and repeatable?
Documentation. That's where I always start. And so, because I'm someone where I can't just abstractly visualize something, I can't start Googling for a question. I need to start to write out, what the heck am I even doing? And so for me, it always starts with, all right, let me literally write out step by step what I am doing in this thing to see, do I do the same step more than once? And you and I get to the same conclusion. We just approach it a bit differently, because I need to see, okay, step one, open your browser. Step two, find this application. Step three, click on this button. And so that's the way that my brain needs to process it. But once I get that system, set up, those steps written out, then I can start to see, oh, okay, now I'm going to highlight this step here because this is where I might be able to save myself some time. This is where I might be doing it the long way. It makes me think back to when I was running the development team. We also had QA under us, and one of the quote unquote newer things to the team, not to the industry, but to that team in general, was automated testing. And so we would struggle with our release dates because the way that the software was built, we had to test it on a variety of different operating systems and browser combinations, all the way from like Windows 95 to Windows, 10, I think we were on, or Windows XP, which was a horrendous thing, but we forget about that now. But the point being is that we also had to then test it on Firefox and Internet Explorer and Chrome. And so all those different combinations. And so we had two people in our QA department testing all of those different combinations, plus trying to juggle the priorities of other product teams around the company. And so one day we were talking and somebody said, did you know that we could build automated test scripts? And we all just sort of took an audible gasp and said, what? And it became this debate of like, well, can we trust the automation and what does that mean? And so eventually we were able to come to a consensus that we could automate some of the testing, the very routine testing where you basically go in a straight line through the website and the product, and that the QA engineers would test the new stuff, because you always need to make sure you're testing the original stuff too to make sure it doesn't break. And it was an interesting process to go through because I learned a lot about the psychology of the team, the insecurities of the team, what happens if I'm automating. But once they sort of got over that hump of automation wasn't the enemy, it freed up so much more time of the QA team and the development team to do more and more things. And they kept saying, what else can we automate? What else can we automate? And so we almost kind of created this automation monster. But it took a lot of documenting what's happening, making sure there was a lot of transparency. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. It took quite a few months for us to get up and running with this automation. And I think that's sort of the other thing I think about when approaching automation is it's not an instantaneous solution. It's something that does take planning. it's something that does take maintenance. You can't just, declare automation and suddenly everything is working on its own like little, magical machine cogs. Like you have to put a lot of thought into it.
I think it's a really good example because it speaks to that very binary mindset a lot of people operate in. Either you're not automated or you're fully automated and you're out of a job immediately, right? Um,
Mhm.
and it's much more like cooking. Like you don't walk into the kitchen as somebody who's untrained and immediately make a 5 course meal, right? You start with making toast, right, or boiling some water for pasta. And yes, there are some people who do manage to burn boiling water, but for the most part, you start small. You start in little phases, and you work your way up to eventually being able to cook a large dinner or for a dinner party, things like that. And automation, I think, is no different. Where if you're trying to go from zero to using Watson Studio, yeah, you're going to fail, right? You're not going to succeed because it's too big a jump. But if you go from no automation to let's just start copying and pasting our templates instead of manually retyping everything, and then you move to what if there's an app that I can use as a keyboard shortcut to paste my template for me, and then you go to I wonder if there's an app that will schedule that for me so I don't even have to remember to do that, and you like you said you ladder your way up. And I think there's two different sorts of personalities, maybe more than two, but I think we sort of embody that well. There's the process person who can write out the thing and then diagnose and say like, here's where these things go are clearly repetitive. And then there's sort of like the technology and tools person who goes, well, I have a tool for that. I have a tool that can do that. I have a tool that can do that. And you kind of need both. Where I think a lot of marketers fall down is that the non-technical marketer doesn't have that buddy in IT or a marketing technology that they have beers with on a Friday and say, "Hey, how would you tackle this? Right? How would you do this thing?" Or, "Hey, have you ever run across a tool that does this?" And I think that's a great place to get started. Is having that person go, "Oh, well, yeah, you could just write, a 3-line macro would do that for you," and now you're starting to have the language you need to be able to say, "Okay, there's this thing called macros. How do I, start Googling for what is a macro? How do I use macros?" And that I think will help people start their journeys.
Well, you just hit upon two specific things that I want to talk about. So, one, you mentioned templates. Templates are probably the easiest baby step into automation. And so, if you're creating the same report month over month, and what you're finding after a few months is the only thing changing is a couple of numbers, stop recreating it from scratch. And I know that, a lot of marketers might be rolling their eyes like, yeah, no kidding. But it's amazing where what you know versus what you do are two very different things. And it is a discipline. And so knowing that you should create a template and having and using a template, you know, that's a really easy step into automation. And you'll find like, okay, the narrative never changes, the executive summary never changes, the intro never changes. So why am I recreating it every single time, trying to, wordsmith it to make it sound new and fun and interesting when I know my executives don't even read it? That's a whole separate issue. That's a whole separate thing. So start with a template, start with an email template. This is actually something I was talking about with one of our contractors. She said, well, if you just have an email template, then I can send out the email on your behalf and I'll just use the template. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I don't have to rewrite it every single time. And then, and it was just one of those like aha moments of that will save me not a lot of time, but it will save me some time. And eventually these things, these tiny little small moments of automation add up to a bigger amount of time. You know, the other thing, I guess there was two other things, Chris, that you had mentioned was starting too big. And I think that that's where a lot of those automation projects or those attempts fail is trying to automate everything all at once when really start small and pick those little moments that you feel very comfortable with of like if I just automate this one thing, that will save me a little bit of time. If I just automate these two things, that will save me some time. The third thing I just wanted to touch upon, Chris, that you had mentioned was, marketers having that friend, that technical minded friend. I think the trap that a lot of us fall into is we think we need to know all of it solely ourselves. And so if I'm a more traditional offline marketer, and I don't know a lot about digital, I immediately assume, well, I need to, learn everything I can about digital. I need to learn everything I can about tech and IT and solve this problem myself. When, to your point, Chris, that's really not true. There are a lot of other people out there who are willing to help and collaborate. And automation, a lot of times, is a collaborative effort. And so don't be afraid to ask around of, has anyone done this? Or do you know of any tools? Or, whatever the question is. I guess the fourth thing is, when I go out for beers on a Friday night, I'm not talking about work.
That's fair. Well, if work is paying for it, you could talk about it. Talk about
Fair
work.
enough.
How's that? Um,
Fair enough.
I think that's a great point to wrap up on, which is, use the power of the community you have access to. And if you don't have access to a community, I'll put in a quick plug here. Go join the Trust Insights Analytics for Marketers Slack. Go to trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. There's over 1,000 marketers in there asking all kinds of technical and non-technical questions about marketing analytics. We had a question this morning about how do you benchmark a company for acquisition compared to its peers. Lots of questions. So if you have these technical questions like, hey, has anyone ever done X? Stop on by and ask. Totally free to join. That's trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. If you have questions about this episode or any other, go over to the website, trustinsights.ai. Drop us a line, say hi, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Want help solving your company's data, analytics, and digital marketing problems? Visit trustinsights.ai today and let us know how we can help you.